everybody, welcome to Library Corner 3 on a theme. So this month we gave you 2 themes and you voted on Facebook and Instagram to see which one was your favorite. So for March we had 2 themes. We had heroes with titles, so the romance books that you like to read. If it's not a Baron or above, then you just won't read it. Or you could have voted for the theme enemies to lovers. So that's a really well-worn, well-loved plotline. And the winner ended up being enemies to lovers. So oldie but goodie. So, both of these themes were within the romance genre. So, romance books can be a little bit divisive. So, I went on the hunt for 3 books with couples that were just as divisive. So, these picks are based on a little of my own bias and the idiosyncrasies of the internet. So, I searched for new and popular and interesting enemies to lovers books, and these are the 3 that I came up. Overall, my picks were they lean a little bit more towards lovers than enemies, just because sometimes when I read a plot summary and the protagonist is mean, I get not so nice goosebumps. So if you disagree with my picks, or if you have a few of your own to pitch that are a little bit more hate to love, then feel free to put them in the comments and let us know what you think. So the 3 books that I picked for this month. The first one is A Faux Love Story by Lonely. So for years, the Mais and the Nuangs had been at odds, having owned competing neighboring faux restaurants. Bao and Lin, who've been avoiding each other for most of their lives, both suspect that the feud stems from feelings much deeper than friendly competition. But then a chance encounter brings Lin and Bao in the same vicinity despite their best efforts, and sparks fly. It's a very classic love story. And it leads both of them to wonder what took them so long to connect. But then, of course, they immediately remember why. Can Lin and Bao find love in the midst of feuding families and complicated histories? So this particular book, it's a YA, a little bit of Romeo and Juliet kind of thrown in there. It's between the protagonists or high schoolers. It's a very cute, it's a very simple love story. It's enemies to lovers. It's a very low simmer, so you don't get a lot of hate there. It kind of starts, the most hate that you get is from the feuding families, and that's just kind of in the beginning. That's what drives the book forward. So both families are Vietnamese Americans, and this book delves into generational differences. So it's really good about looking through at those generational differences from a kind of diasporic view. So that makes the book really, really interesting. So it's a very thoughtful exploration of both families' interconnected past and the shared trauma that the Vietnam War and its kind of generational effects of that. This book leans a little bit heavily on history, and it uses that as the backdrop for the romance. The other really great thing about this book is the food. The descriptions of the food are amazing. You'll read this book and be very, very hungry and want pho. It's great. It's glorious. But overall, A Faux Love Story by Lonely. That one is a very cute, very simple, kind of low simmer enemies to lovers. For our next recommendation, we have Red, White, and Royal Blue by Cassie McQuiston. So if you're into romance genres, like this one is kind of showing up on everyone's radar. This one is very, very hyped. But in general, the book is about the first son, Alexander Claremont Diaz. So the son of the President of the United States. And Alex is the closest thing to a prince this side of the Atlantic Ocean. But international socialite duties do have their downsides. Namely, when photos of a confrontation with his longtime nemesis, Prince Henry of the UK, and a royal wedding leaks to the tabloids and threaten American-British relations. So the plan for damage control is basically staging a fake friendship. So we don't quite go into that fake relationship just yet. But they stage a fake friendship between the first son and the prince. So that's how the love story kind of kicks off. As President Claremont kicks off her re-election bid, Alex finds himself in a secret relationship with Henry that could derail the campaign and upend 2 nations. So this one has a lot of drama in the background. It's YA and it's LGBTQ plus romance. So that kind of, I think, contributes to the hype a little bit, just because you don't have a lot of LGBTQ romance that is light and fluffy and fun and cute, because this is basically what this book is. It's enemies to lovers. I want to say on the scale of lovers to enemies is kind of a doused fire, which is that you start off with a lot of hate that's probably misguided, but they just don't like each other at the beginning. And a lot of it is due to misinterpretation. So, and then it goes from dislike to not real quick. So it's like you had a fire and then you just threw some water on it and then everything is light and fluffy and romantic. So it's very, very hype just because of that LGBTQ romance, like I said. But basically it's a very conventional love story with a non-mainstream couple, which I think is why it's so popular. Because it's something new with the basic kind of love story trope, but with a kind of new perspective. Personally, I love the diversity in the book. I was very happy that Alex is a Mexican American from a multiracial family. There's lots of LGBTQ representation, you would obviously. And I love reading that in my books. I love diversity. It's great. It touches upon heavy subjects, so it talks a little bit about international politics and representation. But because this is a light and fluffy book, it doesn't delve into it. It doesn't affect the plot as much. For some people, that's a good thing. For other people, it's a bad thing. So I've read a lot of reviews that say, oh, like the kind of the setup of the royal family and the realism of that is totally incorrect, which it probably is. But if you're just looking for a light and fluffy love story, this is what you want. All right. So for our next and last book recommendation in our enemies to lovers theme. So this one is very, very popular. It's coming up on a lot of internet lists, basically. And it's basically, it sounds like one of these books. It's either you really love it or you really hate it. And I think that depends on whether or not you actually like the enemies to lovers trope. But this book is called The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. So Lucy Hutton has always been certain that the nice girl can get the corner office. She's charming and accommodating and prides herself on being loved by everyone at Bexley and Gammon. Everyone except for coldly efficient, impeccably attired, physically intimidating Joshua Templeman. And the feeling is mutual. Trapped in a shared office together, maybe 50 or 60 hours a week, they've become entrenched in an addictive, ridiculous, never-ending game of one-upmanship. Lucy can't let Joshua beat her at anything, especially when a huge new promotion goes up for the taking. If Lucy wins this game, she'll be Joshua's boss. If she loses, she's going to resign. So why is she suddenly having steamy dreams about Joshua and dressing for work like she's got a hot date? We'll find out. But after a perfectly innocent elevator ride ends with an earth-shattering kiss, Lucy starts to wonder whether she's got Joshua Templeman all wrong. Maybe Lucy Hutton doesn't hate Joshua Templeman, and maybe he doesn't hate her either. Or maybe this is just another game. So that's a pretty interesting summary based off of an office romance. So this is very much office romance, very much enemies to lovers. It's a contemporary romantic comedy, right? And on the scale of enemies, like hate basically, to love, it's kind of in the middle with a lot of hair pulling. So that's kind of where it is on that scale. It has very, very high ratings. A lot of people find it very cute, very funny. And then some people compare it to the real world and dislike it very much. So I guess it depends on the type of reader you are, whether or not you'll actually like this book. If you like to read things that are a little bit more realistic, you probably won't like this book, because a lot of office shenanigans in this book would not fly in the real world. You would get fired. You kind of have to decide to overlook or not to overlook. That is the question. So it basically comes down to whether or not you agree with this quote. Hating someone feels disturbingly similar to being in love with them. So if that's the way you like your romance, then you will love this book and maybe some of our other picks. If not, tune in next month and we will vote on a different theme and you'll get some different book recommendations. So if you have read any of these books or if they sound interesting, let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day. And enjoy the rest of your week.